the United States is critically behind in regulation. Bitstamp's a very, very global company. In fact, our primary base of business is in Europe, and the regulations there, the VASP regimes were good, but the MiCA framework, which is being implemented right now, has unleashed and unlocked a whole nother level of participation. So, for instance, banks in Europe are all working to start offering crypto buying and selling. Bitstamp, has a white label offering, so we're working with many of them. But the banking situation in the U.S., for instance, I mean, they can't even utter the word without really creating risk for themselves. So the U.S. has a long way to go. The last few months have been encouraging for sure, and if there is an administration change, that will certainly be a game changer. But we got some work to do.
Okay, so I want to start this next question with Ray. When we were preparing for this presentation, Ray, you were explaining, your take on the ECN model and some of the issues with respect to how the current market structure works in Bitcoin in general. So why don't you give an audience a sort of basic breakdown of that, explain it simply as you can, and let's have a discussion about that and get Alex and Bobby in as well.
Thanks. There are computer science experts here. There are regulatory experts like you, Joe. My passion is market structure and trading. I've been in the capital markets trading businesses for about 31 years. Shocking. I counted the years this morning and it scared me. Running electronic trading in FX at Goldman and at Jefferies. And if you think about the market structure in crypto, it's pretty simple. It's very sort of retail focused, and that makes sense due to the origin story of crypto. It started out as a retail product. Many asset classes start out with institutional participation and then grow retail. Like crypto was kind of the other way around. A lot of the exchanges are not really exchanges, they're brokerage firms in the traditional definition. That's not that important, but they all seem to all have the same central limit order book model, a CLOB, where all the bids and all the offers are in the same matching engine, and that matching engine just matches on a time price priority. That's excellent in retail, perfectly sufficient, works great. If you believe that the regulatory environment is maturing in the United States, which will then encourage institutional adoption, then you need to start thinking about infrastructure, you need to start thinking about market structure in a different way that's more suitable for institutional participation. For example, in retail, it's very homogeneous. The orders are generally friendly to market makers. They're generally the same size. But when you get institutional participation, you get a high degree of variation between friendliness. Some are aggressive traders, some are not. And then the command of liquidity is different for all these different types of participants. I come from foreign exchange, which is very similar to crypto in that it's global, unregulated, and fragmented. And I have a saying that the shot caller in the prison yard in FX are the 15 to 20 serious market makers, both banks and non-banks, that actually knit everything together. And I think that's very true in crypto as well. So a market structure that is super friendly to market makers is really important. In an all-to-all CLOB, a market maker can't differentiate between friendly order flow and aggressive order flow, and it's very difficult for a market maker to have different hedging routines for each type of flow that they might face off against.
Ray, sorry to interrupt you, but why is that important? What is the advantage that comes from that?
I'm stealing too much time. It's important because at the end of the day, in a market structure that is friendly and favorable to market makers, the spreads compress. And an FX ECN model allows market participants to curate liquidity pools in the same tech stack so that market makers can have differentiated pricing sessions with different types of flow. I'll leave the introduction to that at In FX, there was a central limit order book that led sort of the foreign exchange business called EBS, and these ECN models developed, and today they're 90% cheaper in terms of trading costs and spreads. So it's a significant difference in trading experience, and I think we're moving in that direction in crypto.
Excellent. So let's get Bobby first, and then Alex. If you have anything to comment on this or the market structure in general, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I definitely agree that diverse participation is important for healthiness in any market, in any order book. It takes a lot of different types of flow and a lot of complementary types of flow to make growth happen, liquidity happen, and that's good for everybody. I do think that there are traditional structures that are valid as more institutions come into the space, but I also think there's been some innovations that have come out of the crypto markets that I hope don't get lost in the equation as more institutions come into the space. I mean, for instance, 7 by 365 by 24 hours, just as one kind of obvious example, but there's others as well.
Okay, Alex, anything?
No, I don't have a whole lot to add on this.
So we'll start with Alex in the next question. So the topic, that's one of the top this year, right, that has everybody interested in talking since really January, has been the ETFs, the deployment of the ETFs, gobbling up billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. And I'm wondering, Alex, if you have any take on how market structure has been impacted from the deployment of the ETFs, and any trends you're seeing. As also, if any one of you will go down the line as well, can comment on where are the ETFs getting their Bitcoin? Obviously, they have authorized participants that are going into the market. Are they going on some of the centralized exchanges? Are they buying them OTC? Take it away.
Yeah, so I'll speak first to just this trend that we're seeing on the retail side of things, because we serve mostly sort of mass affluent and up and small and medium-sized businesses. The ETF was a huge boon for us. When the ETFs launched, a ton of retail demands into just buying actual Bitcoin also grew. I was doing some research on this and looking at how gold ETFs impacted gold ownership. And actually, if you look at the historical surveys of gold ownership over time, gold ETFs actually drove a lot of physical gold ownership as well.
Why do you think that is?
I think it legitimized it as an asset. I think it created a lot of marketing for it. It kind of got the blessing of the system as this thing to use and save with real amounts of money. I think that Bitcoin's seeing that same thing. On where they're buying the Bitcoin, I think the short answer is Coinbase Prime, but a lot of them are trading with some other desks. I think it depends on the actual ETF. I know Bitwise does trading with a lot of different counterparties. I think some of the bigger ones might just trade straight on Coinbase Prime for simplicity. That's my understanding.
Ray?
To your question, my understanding is the asset manager managing the ETFs bids out to APs, order flow, based on the supply-demand dynamic of that time, and it's the APs are generally seeking best price, best liquidity, and currently there's a combination of different places to do that. A fair amount of it could be OTC, but a fair amount of it could be exchange-driven. But it's really the APs that are essentially, and they're all essentially market makers. It's the APs that are actually out there driving and taking the liquidity. And
taking it where?
I think it's a combination of different venues. And I'm sure all of that is proprietary, but most of that flow will happen on where the liquidity is and where it is at price. So combination of exchanges and OTC, but probably mostly exchanges.
Bobby?
Yeah, I could support what Ray is saying here. Clearly, the ETF, as Alex mentioned, legitimized this asset class, particularly in the U.S., and so really resonated with the retail side of the market, which is great. And the net effect is just a tremendous amount of inflow, a ridiculous amount of inflow, which is really good for the entire ecosystem. In terms of where it's going, I happen to know for a fact that a lot of it's coming to exchanges via the authorized partners. So why? Because Bitstamp is the primary liquidity provider behind at least the most significant authorized partner. And we work very, very closely with them, both to prepare for and then to manage this incredible amount of inflow coming through that channel. I'm sure there's other channels at work here too, via Coinbase Prime, for instance, but definitely exchanges are playing a key part of the process of providing liquidity and normalizing that flow within the whole system.
Yeah, the next question is about the futures market, in particular. How the increase of the flows into the spot ETFs have impacted futures. There was a well-documented basis trade, right, where people were taking one side of the bet with the futures market and then the spot market. Anybody have any comments on that or takes on how the futures market in particular? We'll start with Ray, because I bet you got something for us.
Yeah, I think the basis trade is really driving the price right now. The basis trade, for those that don't understand that, is you can essentially go long spot and sell, and I'll use a listed future as an example. You can sell a CME future. The CME future at the beginning of the contract life will trade at a premium to spot due to funding differentiation, and then it accretes to pari passu at expiry. So you can lock in market neutral, risk free, 10 to 15% annualized in that. And in absence of another catalyst to get new participation really going, the big trade right now is to do that basis trade.
Okay, Ray, so if you go on Bitcoin Twitter and follow social media, people will say, oh, this is a form of price suppression, right? This is going to push the price down. That's the rumor that circulates. What do you say about that? Is that true, half true?
I think it's true. Bitcoin right now, in absence of a new catalyst, is trading like a high-yield bond. And we're trading in a 15,000, 20,000 point range. And it's yielding 15%. That feels like high yield to me.
Alex?
I don't have a ton of insight into the futures market. We keep things simple. I just buy Bitcoin and hold it.
Good stuff. Bobby?
Yeah, I think Ray articulated it well. As with the traditional markets, the price discovery process moves from the spot side to the derivatives, the futures side, and that's certainly happening or happened. But we're not all the way there yet, which is why this basis trade, I think, is still super meaningful. But no question that there's going to be some really developed, deep futures liquidity pools that will kind of create more of a level playing field, let's say, across the industry, and the price of Bitcoin will become more independent. At least that's my view.
Okay, we'll go right back to Bobby for the next one. So we typically think of regulation in the standpoint of impediments and disadvantages, but I'm wondering if you could sit down with some of the chief regulators for the industry, talk face to face, get your wish list through, what would that be?
Gosh. Well, a couple things. Firstly, regulators have a tough job. And I do work closely with lots of regulators around the world, and they've got a tough job, and they have a lot of pressure, and they're doing their best. However, as we said earlier, in the U.S., there's been other political forces, I believe, at work here that have slowed everything down, and the net of that is a lack of clarity and a lack of certainty. And there's just an awful lot of companies like Bitstamp and others that just want to do it right, just want to follow all the rules, just want to be safe and trustworthy and transparent, and nobody will tell us what that is. And so if I had the chance to speak with some of the key regulators in this country, including on the securities side and on the banking side, and starting with Congress, really, let's catch up and put a framework together that we can rely upon. And it's not just the exchanges I'm worried about, it's all of the retail and institutional money that's sitting on the sideline because they just are waiting for a clearer set of rules. And so we need to get out of our way. Now, as you guys all know, it's really encouraging over the last couple of months. We have this bill, FIT 21, that's been passed by the House. And, my connections on the Hill say it's being worked on right now. There's stablecoin opportunities. That's a kind of a no-brainer, I think, in terms of where we can start. So there's good opportunities on the horizon.
Okay, Alex?
I think the biggest one that I would push someone is to stop the banks from discriminating against our companies. There's only a small handful of banks in the United States that will work with us to process payments or even just give us a corporate account. I think that we need a change in FDIC leadership, and a change in administration will help that. And then I also think that there needs to be a clarification. Sort of altcoins and Bitcoin are very different things. Look, let exchanges get a casino license, right? But I think that don't pull Bitcoin into this sort of morass of sort of speculative assets that creates a lot of consumer issues, and apply all those regulations to Bitcoin.
Why do you think it gets pulled in? Why does Bitcoin get pulled into all the rest of the casino?
Information asymmetry. I think that they're just, to them, this is all one thing. It's sort of like just technology, right? It's kind of like lumping all internet companies together. To the layperson, that's what it looks like. And so I think it's just a lack of understanding. And I think it's what the big players want to happen, right? Because if Bitcoin's separate, then they want all of this to just be under one unified regulatory regime, and it makes their life a lot easier. So the lobby money is behind that as well.
Ray?
I think just in general, there's been, in the regulatory and legislative environment, a lack of enthusiasm for innovation, and we've forgotten that innovation is what has made the country great. And so I'd like to get some enthusiasm back into the mix, and then with that enthusiasm, identify clearly what the rules are, because the industry's been begging for clear rules for years, and it's somewhat of a disgrace, disappointment that we haven't gotten there yet, given our history.
Absolutely. So we're about done here, but I want to go down the line one more time, starting with Bobby, all the way to the left. Any hot takes you have? Anything you want to leave the audience with that you haven't covered already? The floor is yours.
Thanks. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I think the second half of this year and the first half of next year, we're going to see an unprecedented amount of institutional inflows into this marketplace. It's just a convergence of a number of macro factors, and the most recent ETH ETF approval really helps. So, at Bitstamp, we're preparing for that, and I think that creates opportunities for everybody.
Ray?
I'll shamelessly promote a new business coming out of Bakkt, and ask everyone to keep your eye on some announcements coming up, but we'll be launching an FX-style ECN, ultra-high performance, in some really high-profile partnerships. So super excited about that, and thank you everyone for listening.
And Alex?
Stay humble and stack sats.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.